Great sporting drama, great human drama, and occasionally great courtroom drama. Good, bad, sometimes ugly, but never less than absolutely compelling. It's the Tour. Well, that is the site of the 2008 Tour de France getting underway from the port city of Brest a short time ago, and already it's controversial. In fact, it's a renegade race, the first Tour in history to be run in defiance of cycling's world governing body, the UCI. And that's just the first break with tradition. There's no opening prologue time trial this year, no time bonuses either, just straight racing and straight onto the open road for 3 weeks and 3,500 kilometres around perhaps the most exciting Tour route for half a century.
Good afternoon from the village of Plumelec, where the Sunday market's doing its best business of the year as the locals stock up in advance of the arrival of the Tour. After last year's start in Britain, Brittany gets the honour of launching the race this year, although really the Tour's starting where it always does these days, which is to say in the middle of a huge row. Unable to agree with cycling's world governing body over the best way to fight doping, or the future of the sport in general for that matter, the Tour's organisers are going their own way and running their own show. They've altered the rules, ratcheted up the penalties and exercised their right to invite who they like and keep out who they don't, even if it means there's no place for the defending champion. The result, they hope, will be a radically cleaner Tour than last year's. Now, in a couple of minutes, we'll be talking to Chris Boardman. First, though, our annual look at the contenders, starting with apologies for absence.
Topping the list of no-shows is last year's winner, Alberto Contador. He switched teams in the off-season to Astana, along with 2007's third-place finisher Levi Leipheimer. Not a great career move as far as the Tour's concerned, because the organisers refused to have Astana at the race. Not for anything those two have done, but because of the unwelcome transfusion of bad publicity they got from Contador's predecessor, Alexander Vinokourov, kicked out last year, you'll remember, for blood doping. Needless to say, Vino's not here either. For one thing, he's serving a 12-month ban. For another, he's retired, allegedly. Michael Rasmussen's case is more one of involuntary redundancy, leading last year when he was sacked and sent home for deceiving drug testers over his whereabouts. The only action he's seen since is legal action, a failed claim for unfair dismissal against his team. So, if none of those men can win the race, then who can? Australia's Cadel Evans was only 23 seconds from winning it all last year, then nearly scuppered his chances this year trying to shave those seconds off his time trialling. The Australian experimented with a new position on the bike, looking for extra speed, and brought on a bout of tendinitis. He's fit now, though, and he'll start as favourite. How he copes with the pressure of being favourite may well determine where he finishes. A disastrous time trial killed off Alejandro Valverde's chances last year, leaving him with a metaphorical and several actual mountains to climb to catch the leaders. He couldn't and finished 6th. The Spaniard has improved against the clock this year, and 3 weeks ago he beat Evans into 2nd place in the traditional Tour warm-up race, the Dauphiné Libéré. How much racing and how much warming up the two of them were doing, we're about to find out. It should be fascinating. Damiano Cunego was best young rider on his Tour debut 2 years ago. 2 years before that, he'd looked the best young rider in the world, winning his home Tour of Italy at the age of 22. He hasn't quite fulfilled that potential, but this year he actually chose to sit out the Giro so that he could concentrate on the Tour. He couldn't have chosen a better year. Spain's Carlos Sastre is the nominal leader of CSC Saxo Bank, but really they're a three-headed beast, and the other two are both Luxembourgers called Schleck. Frank took a famous stage win at Alpe d'Huez on his Tour debut 2 years ago. With his talented kid brother Andy riding alongside him for the first time this year, he's aiming for the podium and may knock Sastre off it in the process. Which just leaves Russia's Denis Menshov, or Denis Mention maybe we should call him, because we always give him one and he never quite seems to justify it. He's won more Grand Tours than any of the other contenders though, with a pair of Vuelta triumphs to his name. And with no Michael Rasmussen this year, he'll have the undivided support of his Rabobank team. Well, here's how the pre-race odds are shaping up. Cadel Evans has been installed as the bookie's choice at 5-2. Then come Alejandro Valverde at 4-1, Denis Menchov at 8-1, and Damiano Cunego at 14-1. Interestingly, Andy Schleck is more highly fancied than his brother. He's at 15-1, Carlos Sastre 17-1, and Frank Schleck is currently out at 40-1. So Cadel Evans has the title of pre-race favourite. What he's perhaps less keen on, all the pre-race attention that goes with it.
I don't know. It's everyone takes a lot of photos and asks you a lot about the tour, but it's been sort of 2 or 3 years building up to this for me, and every year we've been working to build up to what would hopefully be our best level, and it looks like our best level. It's the capability of winning the tour is certainly within our capacities, and I'd say it's been a fast progression, but a reasonably steady one. I think Menchov has been quietly sort of bubbling away there, and he was good in the Giro, but never sort of really not often put on his limits, I think. And Rabobank, they showed last year they have a very good team when they need to, whether it's to defend yellow or ride for the whole tour. They could do that last year, but also strength in numbers, CSC, Cunego. It's going to be interesting, and of course Valverde. He's seemed to have come up to another level as a stage race rider this year. His results in Dauphiné showed, so it's you can say I'm the biggest favourite or whatever, but it's not going to be easy. No matter what happens, there's always going to be plenty of contenders.
Well, I think that was the team we Cadel Evans was using rather than the royal we. And not entirely comfortable looking as favourite, I don't think. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, let's hear from the 2 British riders in this year's race. As you might have heard, Bradley Wiggins and Geraint Thomas have decided to concentrate on the track in the run-up to the Beijing Olympics. So the home interest this year comprises David Miller, the team leader, and in fact part owner of the brand new Garmin Chipotle team, and Mark Cavendish of Team Columbia. Now, a lot of people think Cavendish is the fastest sprinter in the world at the moment, and Cavendish thinks a lot of people are dead right.
I agree, for sure. I'm the fastest. Over the last 200 metres, you can't deny with fact. You look at me, I'm the fastest, But at the end of the day, a bike race isn't just 200 metres, it's 200, 250k before this, and ultimately that's where I can lose a bike race, and that's where I'm working on, is if I get to a finish, and if I get to a finish, I'm in the right position, then pretty much I'll win every time now. But it's about getting there, and that's what I have to work on, and that's what I'll carry on working on.
The real goals for me that lie in that first week. There's a shorter time trial, 30 kilometres on stage 4, which suits me, and what suits me even better are the Moyenne Montagne, which are going to arrive after that. And I think there's an opportunity for me to get the yellow jersey in that first week, and so everything is kind of targeted towards that. Hopefully the stars will align.
I'm not going into this year's Tour de France with an aim of winning the green jersey. I still think I'm not. There's a chance I can wear it, but I'm not consistent over consecutive days enough to be doing it yet. Even when the stage won't finish in a sprint, you still have to sprint for intermediate points before mountains, and I haven't got the condition to do this like some of the other guys have. So, for me it's a bit early, and hopefully 2-3 years I should be challenging for it. But I think this year it is too early for me to challenge to the finish with it, and I'll just be looking for stage wins really.
Well, joining us as ever on the tour is the former yellow jersey wearer and stage winner, doing what these 2 British men are trying to do, Chris Boardman. Chris, you know Mark Cavendish very well. He's incredibly confident, and perhaps the most exciting talent we've had in British cycling for a long time.
I think so. He's very different to what we've seen before. He's not the time trialist. He's very flamboyant, emotional character, fantastic bike handler, his balance and poise, and people have compared him to Robbie McHugh, and he's very, very similar style of rider.
Can he win a stage? It's a hilly first week, but he's pretty fast.
I think he can, actually. He's got more length, shall we say, than a lot of the sprinters, but today's going to be a little bit tough.
All right, now David Miller also looking to take the yellow jersey, but what about the men who want to take it at the end of the race in Paris? Cadel Evans is the favourite, but doesn't really sound like a favourite, and was beaten 3 weeks ago in the Dauphiné Libéré by Alejandro Valverde.
I think he's just about where he needs to be, actually. I had a really good look through this morning. I think he's just what he needs to be at the moment. He is feeling the pressure. For me, Denis Menchov's very interesting as well, so we'll talk about that.
All right, and also very interesting is going to be the route this year. We will preview the whole of it for you, hopefully, before the end of the show, but we're going to kick off with today's stage, which for the first time in 42 years is not an opening prologue time trial. Instead, it's a road stage of 197.5 kilometres, longer than London to Birmingham, to give you a handy reference. In fact, it's Brest to Plumelec, and it's a lot hillier than London to Birmingham too, most notably in the last couple of kilometres up here to the finish, which features a nasty climb that could open up some time gaps. They'll be the only time gaps, remember, no bonuses on the line this year. Well, sadly, the first day of the Tour has already claimed its first victim, young Hervé Duclos-Lassalle, the Cofidis rider, riding his first Tour, and it is now over. He fractured his left wrist, falling at the feed station where so many riders do, and he is out. Out in front is a group of 8 men. They're led by Thomas Voeckler, who knows this route very well. He ran here at the Grand Prix of Plumelec earlier in the year. He knows the finish. They have a lead of about 3 minutes 44 over the chasing group. The winds here are vicious. The pack is strung out. Let's join the road now and the action with Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin.
And from the helicopter, we are looking down on the main peloton here. Already out of the Tour de France is Duclos-Lassalle, Hervé Duclos-Lassalle, the son of a very famous former cyclist, Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle. But Paul, he's broken his wrist, he's gone. But now we've got these 8 riders, 3.5 minutes clear, and slowly but surely being drawn back, because they were out at 8.25 minutes.
Yes, I have to say, Phil, the important thing about that breakaway is it started to form almost as the riders came out of the starting gate this morning at 4 kilometres. By 17 kilometres, 8 riders have got themselves clear, and they built up, as you say, that maximum lead of 8 minutes and 15 seconds. But ever since then, a certain number of riders have been to the front end of the main field, and we're starting to see here you've got Rabobank in the orange, the lime green there of Team Liquigas, the black and red of Team Caisse d'Epargne, and what they are doing is lifting up the tempo all of the time, because they realize today is a very special day in the history of the Tour de France, because there's no time bonus, there is no prologue time trial, so the first man to cross the line will wear the yellow jersey, and that's why we've seen a lot of the teams taking an interest in chasing down that 8-man breakaway. In the 8-man breakaway, probably the most famous rider from France is Thomas Voeckler. He is also looking to see if he can get himself some points in the King of the Mountains classification as well. He currently has the most points from that leading group of 8 riders, and looking down here you can see that Brittany is a real agricultural part of the world. The fact that the arrière du peloton, the back end of the main field, is being shown here is to show us just how long a line is being stretched out, and that is because the pressure is now starting to come on the front. So as we look at the gap now, we're looking at 60 kilometres to go, and an advantage of 3 minutes and 22 seconds.
We are 57.2 kilometres from the line now, 3:17. It's been agonisingly slow to reduce this down from 4 minutes, but the chase is very much there. Hats off to these 8 riders in the breakaway after breaking away and getting up together at around 17 kilometres, 10 miles into the race. They are still holding on to a nice lead here with 57 kilometres still to go.
Well, we're looking at 3 minutes and 16 seconds for the main field, and I have to say, if you look down there, you can see that the main field is starting to take a serious interest now. As you can see, it's stretched out into a very long line. Well, as we look down at these riders now, you can see the gap is going to be rather interesting to see how dramatically it comes down a little bit later on, because once we do start to come down, I think the teams of the sprinters will try and get themselves and pull it back together very quickly indeed. But you can see Crédit Agricole there in the green and white.
So good racing here by all of the riders as they continue to set the pace. And it's looking very, very good now that Caisse d'Epargne doing a lot of the work here. They're trying to bring it back. Alejandro Valverde has said in his press conference he would like to win the first stage. Goodness knows why, Paul, because that pulls on the yellow jersey for him, and a big favourite defending from the start. I like Alessandro Valverde, but he's not Eddie Merckx.
Well, he isn't, but you know, this is definitely his kind of finish, and every now and again I keep looking out at the finish line just to see what the weather is like and what the flags are like, because that's always a big indication to me. And at the moment, the flags are sometimes they're straight out in a big straight line, other times they really are starting to look as if there's absolutely no wind at all. So, you know, the exciting thing is that we're right here on the finish line, and we're going to witness it firsthand.
That's right, the caravan coming up here on the line, they're now in. That means the riders will follow in about an hour and a quarter, hour and 20 minutes. And there's the peloton as they continue now. Nice blue socks here on Team Milram. Without their top sprinter, Pataki, who's no longer with the team after that very strange doping charge of too much nasal spray, and he is an asthmatic. He is believed to be signing up for a new team very shortly, so their hopes relying on 38-year-old Erik Zabel, who won the stage the last time we came to Plumelec way back in 1997. Paul, that's 11 years ago. You're almost still racing. Almost.
Almost. I think I've been retired about 15 years then. But no, Erik Zabel is an incredible character, participating in his 14th Tour de France this year, and over that 14-year career at the Tour de France, he's won himself no less than 12 individual stages and 6 green jerseys.
German record, yes, absolutely.
So, as you can see now, this is the leading group, and they're looking at 55 kilometers to go to the finish, hovering at the 3-minute mark now, but it is starting to move in the opposite direction. While the main field, they're trying to gauge the catch. And what they want to do is to make sure, if they can, they catch the riders at around about 10 or 15 kilometers to go, and then they'll try and control the front end of the main field to make sure there are no crazy little counter-attacks on the run in towards the finish, which is, as I've said on a number of occasions, a very tricky finish with this final almost 2-kilometer climb up to the line. But Erik Zabel, the man who we were talking about, knows it extremely well, because he won there back in 1997. Well, just looking down at the main field here, it's quite interesting, because every now and again they get themselves stretched out into an extremely long line, indicating that the pressure's on, the chase is on, and they slow down again, and they keep moving up to that top speed of around about 50-55 kilometers an hour. I think they really are just judging the distance between themselves and this leading group of 8 riders. That's just Thomas Vogler, just second from the back there in the pale blue jersey there of Team Bouygues Telecom. Stefan Auger in the red of Team Cofidis, he's at the back. The man in the white on the right-hand side there is the rider from Agri-Tubel, Geoffroy Lecatre. FD Jeux, the Française des Jeux, is Lilian Jégu. The orange is Ruben Perez, riding his 2nd Tour de France. And they're probably pretty happy now to be going through this slightly forested, wooded area, because that keeps them out of the wind. And from the commentary position here, I'm looking, and the wind at the finish line seems to have dropped.
The beautiful scenery of Brittany here. Remember, we're in Brittany now for 3 days. That's what they've paid for, and that's what we're going to get and enjoy here on the Tour de France, because these narrow roads constantly twist and turn. The undulations are very, very special here for all of the riders, and 43 of them in their first Tour de France.
Welcome back. Just around 50 kilometres to go to the finish here in Plumelec, and there has been a crash while we were on the commercial break. Chris Boardman, the main man to go down in it, one of the pre-race favourites, Frank Schleck. Doesn't look to be too badly hurt, but it's not the kind of thing you're looking for on day one.
No, it's not ideal. It's very, very tense, because we've got narrow roads. There isn't enough shelter for everybody. The riders are very close together. One small mistake, and of course it goes right back through the whole peloton. So difficult for them to get teammates to come back for them, and very difficult for them to actually get back to the front at this stage of the race, because they've got 180 guys that somehow they've got to get past. So not ideal, but I think everybody's going to have one of these incidents before the end of the week.
All right, well, also involved in that crash were Jimmy Kasper of France and Yaroslav Popovic, the Ukrainian rider who's a teammate of Cadel Evans on Silence Lotto, so that could be a loss for him if he's badly hurt. Let's get back out on the road, less than 50 kilometres to go. Here's Phil and Paul.
We're looking now at the head of the peloton. No, we're not. We just switched to the back of the peloton, and the white jersey of Fabien Weckmann is back in from the crash. There's a very nice array of all the team jerseys, past and future, of the Tour de France. It seems that there was nobody seriously injured in that crash. We're getting no reports at all. The riders have all chased back in A bit of a scare though for Cadel Evans, Paul, because Jaroslav Popovic is the man who's going to hopefully ride alongside him this year and help him in the mountains.
Yeah, I think when we saw those riders go down, we noticed they got themselves up pretty quickly. They didn't seem to be injured at all, but what happens is that when you have a crash halfway through a stage like this, your body's still warm, the muscles are still warm. You can find out what the consequences are going to be the next day or the day after that, and I think that is the most important thing. But they looked okay to me, and they got themselves back up and back into the main field pretty rapidly. The main field have slowed down a fraction there. You can see down to 3 minutes and 25 seconds, but I think the main field now feel that they can pull back those 8 riders anytime they want. But I think the exciting thing is, in that King of the Mountains classification, they're completely equal on points, on positions that they've acquired. So it's actually going to be the position of the rider who crosses the line on the best position on today's stage.
Absolutely. They've got the same number of first places, 2 each. They've got the same number of second places, 1 each, and the same number of third places, 1 each. So it's who finishes ahead of the other at the end of the day will pull on the polka dot leader's jersey in the King of the Mountains tomorrow. I bet the judges never thought that would ever happen in the history of the sport, but it just has.
Well, they probably thought it might happen because it's actually it's catered for in the rules and regulations of the race, and fortunately for them, unfortunately I suppose for Thomas Vogler there, you can see just closest to us in the pale blue shorts, he's going to have to make sure that he drags himself up that final climb in fairly fine form here this afternoon if he wants to get what he was dreaming for at the start of the day, the polka dot jersey. And that's David de la Fuente. He was a rider who we noticed come to the fore of the sport a couple of years ago, a very aggressive bike rider, and a man who was not scared of going out onto the attack. He had the lead in the King of the Mountains jersey competition himself back in 2006, but he was an exceptionally aggressive rider. AG2R is Jose Luis Arrieta. You see that little transponder, the little yellow addition to the rear triangle of the bike there. That is a small transponder that tells us just exactly when the riders cross the finishing line. Now, theoretically, that works well, as soon as the riders cross the line, we get a chance to know exactly what position they cross the line in. That is, unless, of course, they change a bike with a teammate on a run in towards the finish.
Just looking there, Paul, at the Breton flag, it seems to be indicating a slight tailwind at the moment. The wind is still blowing fairly strongly. It is in gusts. The riders are often in valleys, so they may not feel it all the time. But that Breton flag, that's blowing quite strongly here. Remember, we moved up the road just 3 minutes to the breakaway. And 128 is Geoffroy Lecat. He's been in the action for Agri-Tubble. Agri-Tubble is a French team. It was given a wild card entry into the Tour de France. It was the organiser's choice, and they've got some good riders on that team.
Pretty funny, because we commentated earlier on this year on the Dauphiné Libéré, and in fact Christophe Moreau is the man who won the Dauphiné Libéré on the previous year, and they didn't invite the former year's winner Christophe Moreau because his team wasn't a Pro Tour team. They only invited the Pro Tour members, and that was a little bit of a shame, I think. Christophe Moreau is here though, and he is participating in the Tour de France this year because of that wildcard selection, and they are the owners of the French National Championships with Nicolas Vaugondy, who won it for the second time.
Absolutely right. The Dauphiné Libéré are different organisers to the Tour de France, of course, and they exercise their prerogative. They are a Pro Tour race. The Tour de France isn't a Pro Tour race, but there are indications that the Pro Tour is beginning to crumble. Cofidis have announced this last 24 hours that they are withdrawing from the Pro Tour because they don't really see any point in riding in countries where they don't sell their wares, and also that will mean the team will be reduced and they'll become what we call a continental Pro Tour team. But they'll ride all the big races like the Tour de France, and that's what excites them.
Yeah, certainly turbulent moments, I suppose, for the sport, as there's always the possibility of a second federation, international governing federation, setting itself up, because this race, by the way, is not being governed under the auspices of the International Cycling Federation. It's being governed under the auspices of the French Cycling Federation, and that, I think, well, it's the first time, Phil, ever that it's happened that the Tour de France has not been governed by the national governing body, the international governing body.
And I really think that is wrong, but we'll see what develops over the next few months. I hope that the world body and the big organisers of world cycling do come together and get themselves sorted out. But the breakaway today, we expected a breakaway to get away. In the first hour of cycling, there was over nearly 27 miles covered. It was a very fast start over undulating hilly roads. And we had a couple of small climbs early on. These are the 8 who finally snapped the elastic and got clear. They went out to 8.25 minutes maximum. As you can see, it's back to 3 minutes. We don't know who's going to lead the King of the Mountains tomorrow. It's all finished at the moment out on the road. It's who finishes in front of the other gets the jersey. It's between Thomas Voigtler and Bjorn Schroeder. One will wear the polka dot tomorrow.
Well, Thomas Voigtler, I'm sure, is going to pull himself inside out to finish close to the front end of the main field on this climb up to Plumelec, because he realizes he will want the honor tomorrow of wearing the King of the Mountains jersey, Phil, on the roads of Brittany, because as you've said, we are in Brittany for 3 days, and this really is this is the hotbed of French cycling, and it's where, as we've seen, there have been so many great names come into the sport from this part of the world.
Absolutely, and we mustn't forget that Thomas won the Grand Prix Plumelec here over the similar roads, similar finish earlier this year, so they know him here and like him. He doesn't come from this area, he comes from the opposite side of France, actually, Paul, because he's an Alsatian.
Well, normally his actual origins are from Alsace, but he actually grew up on the island of Martinique.
That's right.
In the Caribbean, so I really wonder sometimes how he got interested in riding a bicycle. He should have been a windsurfer.
Absolutely.
Looking back there, you can see the spearhead at the front end of the main field, and that's where the majority of the pacemaking and the work is being done. And there are still a large number of the teams of the heads of state at the front end of the main field paying a serious amount of attention on this. It's been a long, nervous day, and it was bound to be on the first day on the open road in the Tour de France, but this year even more nervous in the fact that we did not have an opening day's prologue. Pale blue jersey over on the left-hand side, you can just see there is the new jersey that we've not had much chance to see at the front end of the main field so far, and that's Team Columbia, the team which was formerly Team High Road, which was formerly Team Mobile. It's the same structure, but the team has been brought together, and it's a team which is a very interesting team. They have 8 different nationalities on their squad here of 9 riders at the Tour de France. George Hincapie is one of them, and of course riding for Great Britain is Mark Cavendish, a man who maybe won't be the winner of the stage today, but certainly I think a little bit later in the Tour will be one of the winners of one of the individual stages, because he is basically now being dubbed as the fastest sprinter in the world. So Liquigas on the front there, doing an awful lot of work, thinking about Pipo Pozzato, black and red. Great view down the back there. You can just see in the distance there, that's the convoy of team cars. Now each team in the race has 2 team cars. On top of those cars, they've got bikes for every individual bike rider in the race, and of course they've also got spare wheels, and the mechanic rides in that car as well. Drinks are on board, whether they be water or electrolytic drinks, they're all there. Just sitting at the back there, the champion of Denmark, that is Nicky Sorensen. Just saw him with the red jersey with the white cross on it. The national championships of all of the European countries just taking place 1 week ago before the start of the Tour. There's Christophe Moreau.
Well, there's a significant lifting of the pace now, Paul, even though from this shot you wouldn't think so, but these boys now are stepping on the power. 2 minutes 46. Liquigas, those lime green jerseys from Italy. Just taking a look at our little private monitors here, Sebastian Lang's cadence has gone up to 104. Now that's a big increase, and his heartbeats have come down. How do you work that one out, from 156 to 135?
Well, remember last time we had a quick look into the life of Sebastian Lang. He was on the early slopes of a climb, so that would have been why his heart rate had jumped up a fraction, and I'm sure it'll jump up again, Phil, once we start to get a little bit more nervous down towards the end. But I'm quite nervous about the wind. Just look at the wind on the trees there as these riders are charging along. It's mainly a tailwind, which is why we're seeing the average speed actually increase in the race. After 3 hours of racing, we've run off at an average of 42 kilometers an hour. Yet when I look out at the commentary position, the flags on the finish line are not moving at all. So there's no wind up here, but there certainly is out on the course.
I just spotted an Irish flag there. That was blowing quite well. And remember, this group is still now charging through the beautiful countryside of Brittany. The gap is 2:36. They are now moving it around about, I would say, much nearer 50 kilometers an hour as actual top speed just at the moment. And the fields look beautiful here, but the weather, as it seems to have been all over Europe, not as normally as hot as we would have expected. I remember exactly a year ago when the race began from the United Kingdom, London. London celebrated its summer last year. It lasted 2 days, and it happened to be for the depart of the Tour de France and Buckingham Palace, and the next day when we raced down to Canterbury. A marvellous, marvellous weekend. 3 million spectators on the roadside on that occasion.
Well, we're just looking now to the next sprint point of the day at Remugnol. Now, I wonder if Geoffroy Lecatre is going to make it 3 for 3, because he won the first one after 62 kilometres. He won the second one at 90 kilometres. Now, this one is at 157 kilometres into the race. He's the rider from Agri-Toubel. He's got a white jersey on with a couple of slightly lime green patches. There's Thomas Voeckler, and he's wondering whether or not he's going to be the king of the mountains at the end of today.
Well, I've just heard from Alan Piper and off air, and he's saying, Paul, that Kim Kirken, his team, might go well today. He's certainly coming off a very good Tour of Switzerland where he held the lead. He lost it on the final weekend, but the sort of finish for Kim.
Well, I think the reason they're doing that, they're switching away the interest in Mark Cavendish, who's probably thinking a little bit further down the road to some of the slightly flatter sprint finishes, because I happen to believe today's not really the kind of finish for a sprinter like Mark Cavendish, or of course for Robbie McEwen.
I absolutely agree today. This breakaway, we're writing it off, of course, and the time is coming down with 25 miles still to run, 40.8 kilometres. They will get caught because the finish is so difficult. And they're actually questioning now who is coming to the front to start keeping the pace up. They've lost a little bit of their impetus, and you watch that clock, it'll slowly descend a bit now.
There's my man, 1:28. Geoffroy Lecatre. He's won the first two, and he wants to get it 3 for 3 here.
Well, good for him, because he's now notching points. Remember, this is for the green jersey competition. There's no time bonuses anymore. Lecatre won the one at Plonevet, and he won the one at Gurin. And he's won the one here at Remugnol.
Has he?
I'm not sure.
Well, it was very close on the line. The lunge there coming from Ruben Plaza in the orange jersey of Euskaltel Euskadi. And I have to say,
either way, he's got the most points.
It was close. Yes, he's got the most points so far.
Because Perez hasn't been scoring. He got a third, I think, in one of them, the first one. Yeah. Now, the question is, of course, all the big points for the green jersey come in the first 25 riders over the line in the big sprint for the finish.
Yeah, that's much more important for the point ranking, because on the flat stages, and today is classified as a flat stage, even though there have been a number of fourth category climbs, the first man to cross the line gets himself 35 points. These sprint points that we've been going through right now have been earning the riders 6 points for the first rider to go through that point. So Lecatre, if he did get that third sprint point, and we'll get that information in a couple of moments, will have earned himself 18 points. But it really is on the finish line that there are more.
That's absolutely right. Lecatre was the winner. Perez in second place. Minute 04 and counting now. Looking here at Stéphane Ogier, who's just this second attack from the breakaway of 8 riders, because he sensed now that catch is imminent. It's 1 minute and 28, 36 kilometres from the finish. The result, by the way, of the sprint at Remugnol with 40 kilometres to go. It was Lecatre who wiped out the board today, winning all 3 sprints. Ruben Perez and Lilian Jagou.
Well, this is Schroeder going off the back, caught out in the crossfire there because of that acceleration from Stéphane Ogier, and that would indicate that Schroeder is actually a little bit weaker. Now that gives the advantage to Thomas Voeckler. I still feel these guys are going to get caught, but Voeckler may survive better on the final climb to the finish here in Plumelec, and that's what Voeckler has been dreaming about since the start of the day. But just look at the leaves on the trees here. It is so windy out there on the course. These riders at the end of today will have had a hard day in the saddle.
And it's not the time to remind them they've got 20 more days to go in the Tour de France, and of course there'll be harder days in the high mountains, and that goes David de la Fuente. He's launched an attack. You see, that's the way to go. When they chase someone down, they're out of breath, but there's a good reaction there, and that looks as though it's Lilian Jagou who is now going after de la Fuente, and no reaction. Voeckler looking for somebody else to move.
Yeah, look at the pause. Everybody's now waiting for the next guy to go. They don't want to do the move themselves because they don't want to waste that energy, and it's going to be Stéphane Ogier in the red shorts of Cofidis.
He was the one that put in the first attack, and they're all on him. They were waiting for him to come from the back, and Voeckler just looking for Bjorn Schroeder, putting him in front of him where he can see him, and taking the back. So there is a reaction now, and once these boys start doing these cat and mouse tactics, the gap will close.
That's the problem of this acceleration here and this breaking down of the momentum, because when you're all working together as a solid unit, you keep your average speed up at 42, 43 kilometers an hour. When you've got this acceleration and deceleration, yes, you might go up to 45, 46 kilometers an hour, but then you slow down a lot, and that actually lowers the average speed that the breakaway is attaining. So I think we're going to see these riders get caught pretty shortly, but these two, for the moment, have escaped the fold.
Well, this is the way you form the counter-attack, if you like. And for a while they'll chase. If they feel they're going clear, they'll drop off. De La Fuente just checking it out. He rode very well in the King of the Mountains last year, David De La Fuente. He was always up there. He finished third in the competition, and he was the leader of the King of the Mountains. He did pull on the polka dot jersey in 2006.
Very aggressive rider he was in that Tour de France as well. He was in the breakaway on a number of occasions, and that's probably what he's looking for today. Green and white on the front, that is Crédit Agricole doing the work there for their man Thor Hushovd, who they feel has got the ability to get to the top of this climb in first place. But I wonder if Thor Hushovd is thinking about the first road stage of the Dauphiné Libéré. There was a similar finish to this with a little climb up to it. Hushovd was looking to get himself the yellow jersey, but he got popped on the line by a certain Alejandro Valverde.
Yes, that's worth remembering right now. 34 to go.
So 33 kilometers to go. We're coming into the small town of Locminé, which in fact in the Breton language means the place of the monks. And the reason for that is there was a monastery here which was founded way back in the 6th century by Saint Colomban. So the two leaders, Tête de la Course, Jégu and De La Fuente. And they're just, I think, really trying to prolong the agony. They probably felt that there were starting to be 1 or 2 passengers in that group of 8, and 1 or 2 riders were maybe not contributing quite as much as they wanted to the success of the breakaway. But I do believe that 2 riders, pair of legs, are not going to hold off the main field here this afternoon. But the crowds really are turning out here. The Bretons, as they're called here in Brittany, are people who absolutely adore their cycling. It is one of their major pastimes. They love the sport. We've left the first department of Finistère well behind us, and after 80 kilometers we moved right into the heart of the Morbihan department.
It's absolutely fabulous here, Paul, and the number of cycle races they have here, this is where you can begin. Tommy Simpson began his career in Saint-Brieuc, which is where we go to tomorrow. That's where the great Yorkshireman, actually he came from Nottinghamshire originally, but we always call him a Yorkshireman, and Mr. Tom, as he was known here in France, used to strut around in a bowler hat and a tightly rolled umbrella. He played the part of a British gentleman. The French loved him.
They certainly did. Just looking over to the left-hand side now, you can see the red and white jerseys moving to the front. Now, that is Team Barlow World, and they are obviously thinking about their man Robbie Hunter for the possibility of a stage win this afternoon. I have to say...
You mean Dad?
I have to, yes, Dad, because his wife gave birth to a little baby girl just the other day. But I'm rather proud of Team Barlow World this year because they have a Kenyan cyclist on board, although he's now listed as coming from Great Britain. Well, Chris Froome has changed his nationality, but he was born in Nairobi, grew up at 6,000 feet, and I think that's pretty impressive to see that he's participating in his first Tour de France.
It is. I would like to see him obviously riding for Kenya. He would be the first Kenyan, but officially he is riding for Great Britain because he has parentage and a British passport, and the British Federation, I'm sure, delighted to give him a license, because I don't know, but I would have thought he would qualify for the Olympic Games, and he's a very good bike rider.
And that's what he's trying to do, but I have to say he's probably the only man in the main field who understands Jambo Bwana.
Because he speaks fluent Swahili, and Paul Sherwin speaks fluent Swahili as well, everybody, and he talks to this man in his own language.
I have to say we had a bit of a giggle at Wevelgem when I interviewed him in Swahili. That was definitely one for the books. Just looking down here at this chateau, by the way, this is a chateau that was built back in 1710 by 2 rich Swiss financiers, and they were actually shareholders in the very famous East India Company.
Wow.
And the South Africans would know all about that, because the great Dutch East India Company used to go around the Cape and across to collect all of the spices from the Far East. Yeah, magnificent chateau there. You can see, originally built in 1710. So 30 kilometers to go, 18 miles of racing for the peloton, or the main field. And there you can see the white jersey in about 4th or 5th position. That is Fabian Wegman, the man who went down in one of the early little crashes. So he seems to be fine, and he will be looking forward, I think, to this hilltop finish.
These are the two leaders. They're still knocking out the rhythm here at 26 now. That's just over 15 miles to go, Paul, to the finish. I feel Jigou is doing a little bit more effort at the front than De La Fuente. He's not as convinced that this might work.
He obviously realizes the main field are really going to accelerate over the last 20 kilometers or so. But I still have my little prediction is, Phil, that these guys are going to get caught around about the 15 and a half kilometers to go to the finish, because the main field want to make sure that they've got them back in the fold before they start unfolding their strategy to try and win the stage and win the yellow.
Absolutely. This is a prize we're not normally used to in the Tour de France, because we always have a prologue which gives us a yellow jersey, and so not everybody is up for it. But today, everybody in this race, the first man over the line takes yellow, and it makes for a very nervous main field here. It means the sprinters have got too many rivals and they want to keep out of it, and they're dodging all over the place here as they're doing bunny hops over the central reservations there. Very dangerous thing to do, believe me.
Well, you know, that's why you should not ride at the back end of the main field, because the guys at the front, they can see this, they can feel it happening. If you're at the back, you're at the will of the guy in front of you, letting you know that there's a little bit of a problem in the road, and that's why the majority of accidents in the main field at the back of the peloton. There on the left-hand side, two national champions, Fabian Wegman from Germany, and the black and white there is the all-black Julian Dean, riding for Team Garmin Chipotle now. Just a title that was taken over just before the start of this Tour de France.
3 new big sponsors in the race announced in the last few weeks. But in that peloton there are 43 riders riding the Tour de France for the first time, and boy, have they got a shock coming in the next few kilometers.
Yep, just looking at this, the main field, there's a group of 6. They've now been caught. They're back in the main field, so the race situation now is completely different. 2 lone leaders with an advantage of around about 1 minute and 15 seconds over the front end of the peloton. And this is a moment when they'll have to try and figure out whether or not they keep the pressure on the front end of the main field. I think they will. They just need a few moments to get themselves organized. This, by the way, just out of interest, is the little town of Bignon, and this village was the epicenter of a peasant uprising back in 1794, which really upset the whole of the Morbihan region. D'Epargne, serious team, straight to the front, getting themselves organized, keeping the pressure high, because they know their man who wants to win this Tour de France overall, Alejandro Valverde, has also said he would very much like to win the first stage of this race, because winning the first stage has the ultimate goal here this afternoon. The winner of the first stage, first man across the line, gets himself the yellow jersey. So 25 kilometers to go, 1:25 the advantage. De La Fuente at the back there, I'm starting to feel that he's not completely and utterly convinced that this breakaway is going to succeed, and he realizes you cannot use all of your ammunition on the first day of the Tour. Officially now 25 kilometers to go to the finish, 1.5 minutes over the front end of the main field. 1 abandon on the route here this afternoon. Hervé Duclos-Lassalle, the son of Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, himself a great Tour de France rider, a great classics rider, has had to pull out of the Tour because of an accident which has seen him probably have a broken wrist. We'll find out more about that for definite later on, but he was taken away from the race by ambulance. Getting on the front, this is Marcus Burkhardt from Team Columbia Leisure, one of the great big corporate sponsors, coming in just before the start of the Tour de France to sponsor Team High Road. Followed up there by Team Gerolsteiner. They too currently looking for a new sponsor. Crédit Agricole, the green and white. And the black and red is Cadel Evans, the Spanish team of Alejandro Valverde, the current Spanish national road racing champion. You can see all the work that's being done. Everybody's moving their riders to the front end of the main field. There's a lot of fluidity in the peloton at a time like this, when riders want to make sure that they get themselves into the right position. They got themselves led up to the front end of the main fielder. Agri-Tubel there moving up on the left-hand side as well, keeping themselves organised. They could be thinking about the possibility of looking after two sprinters from their team. Jimmy Casper is one, but a man that a name you might not have heard of before, Romain Felu. Well, in fact, in the Tour de France last year, he was always at the front end of the main field, and he got himself a number of very good places. So it's not a flat run into the finish. As we can see, De La Fuente, 174 now, is picking up the pacemaking. He's probably starting to get a little bit interested by the fact that they haven't closed it down quite as quickly as he was thinking, and thought, well, let's keep the pressure on here for a little while and see whether or not we can survive. Good study of the gears there. And while we look at this rider here from Française des Jeux, Lilian Jégu, it might be a good time to think about the kind of gears that these riders will be running in on the final climb to Plumelec.
A little bit cloudy out on the course now, while it's brilliant sunshine at the finishing line. We're only 15 miles away from the finish of the stage today. And we have a 2-kilometre climb right up to the finishing line. 1:31 the spread now to the peloton.
Welcome back. Another crash, this time at the back of the main field. And Chris Boardman, this is why the favourites like to ride up the front.
Yeah, you've got to spend some energy, but this is the kind of thing that you just can't afford to happen. It's the kind of crash you can very, very easily break a collarbone, so you have to be at the front. It seems like a nothing stage, but it isn't. The Tours can be won and decided on a stage like this.
OK, Stefan Goubert and two Bouygues Telecom riders, Johan Schopp and Javier Florencio, the men down there. No one seriously hurt, we think. They're desperately trying to get back on. The peloton is desperately trying to catch the two men who are out front. And with 19 kilometres to go, there'll be no more breaks. Let's get back to Phil and Paul.
Looking here now at the face of David De La Fuente, inside of 20 kilometres to go. 1 minute and 28 seconds his advantage. He's there up alongside Lilian Jégu. Well, there's been a nasty crash out on the course, and it really was a little bit of a surprise at the back end of the main field. Again, one of those crashes when you're sitting at the back end of the main field, somebody goes down in front of you, and 4 or 5 riders go down all over the place. And that, I think, has caused a little bit of chaos. None of the major big names involved in that crash, but Johan Schopp of Switzerland and of Bouygues Telecom went down pretty hard and ended up looking for a spare wheel. And they will not actually have the advantage of the main field slowing down here, because inside of 20-odd kilometres to go, the main field are in full cry. Marcus Burkhardt on the front, thinking about the possibility of Kim Kirk, and there you can see over to the right-hand side, and it really is the first time we've had a good study of probably what has been one of the most successful teams on the international circuit this year. Started the year as Team High Road, but in the last 48 hours they've announced their new sponsor, Columbia Leisurewear.
11.5 miles to go. 18.3 kilometres is all the same distance when you work it out, Paul, but 1:25. I take my hat off to those two leaders, because we can see the peloton. They are working very hard now, and these two are still holding them off.
These are great roads for an attacking race, and as you've always said in the past, out of sight, out of mind. But I don't think these two riders are completely out of mind for the moment. And as you can see, David De La Fuente is out of the saddle trying to keep his rhythm nice and high, and that's an indication this road is not flat. And there is no flat part of the course between here and the finish line. In fact, the last 1.7 kilometres are completely uphill.
Well, a lot of work being done at the front now by Marcus Burkhardt. He's the pacemaker for Team Columbia, and he might be softening the trail up. Somebody like Kirken to attack at the foot of the final ascent. Maybe Big George Hincapie feels he's got the legs to win it out in the sprint. Now, these are the rejoining of the riders. I'm glad they've got back into the race here. This is Alexander Kuzinski of Belarus, number 66. I didn't quite see who the other two were, but they're coming back nicely.
Well, just
one will be Stefan Goubert on the far right there.
Yeah, one name to throw in from Team Liquigas for later on in the Tour de France is Roman Kreuziger. We haven't seen much of him today, but he created a bit of a surprise just over a week and a half ago by winning the Tour of Switzerland, and a lot of people are tipping him to be the big surprise outsider in the Tour de France this year. 23 years of age, a man to follow. Right now, let's follow these two guys at the front end. David De La Fuente himself, a fairly young rider in the yellow, and Lilian Jégu here from FDJ. Look at the way he's starting to hunch up his shoulders now. It's beginning to hurt, but you can accept that hurt that little bit longer when you think, I might win a stage of the Tour de France, and on a very rare occasion I might cross the line and get myself a yellow jersey. But if you look at the clock, it's not being kind to them.
No, it's coming down rather quickly. It's suddenly gone from 128 to 108. So the little slopes that the two front runners are on now has hurt those legs, and they've started to slow down quite dramatically here. And again, you look at the field, you see the teammates, we call them the domestiques, the helpers of the team leaders, the object being it's their job to lift the pace, to chase down the attacking riders and put their leaders into a position to win. Not everybody can win a stage of the Tour de France. It's men with exceptional ability. But every bike rider who makes the Tour de France is a great cyclist.
Yeah, but it's a rare occasion today, Phil, because the first man to cross the line gets the yellow jersey. And in my career, and this is the 30th time that I've been to the Tour de France, that has never ever been the situation, because it's always been a problem, a prologue since I turned professional back in 1978. This time, any rider who can come up with a victory this afternoon has got the possibility of grabbing that yellow jersey. It's special.
It is absolutely. It's the Golden Fleece. It's the biggest symbol in the sport of cycling.
1 minute and 10 seconds is the official time the gap that's being given, but unfortunately the time is now starting to come down quite dramatically, and in fact we're getting a virtual measurement there from the two motorbikes that cover these riders in the main field behind of 57 seconds. It's inside of the 1 minute mark, and it's inside of 17 kilometers to go. Lilian Jégou, the winner of the Grand Prix La Tropicale Amisabong Ondimba, and that was in the country of Gabon. That was in the month of January, and it's a race that the Français de Jeux go to every year to support. It's Fabian Wegmann there, the national champion of Germany. This is not the place to be now, as we start to see a lot of these riders getting filtered to the back, and right at the back there, 149, Phil, is Thomas Voeckler. Now, he doesn't want to be there if he wants to have any chance at all of getting himself the King of the Mountains jersey, because Voeckler and Bjorn Schroeder are tied on exactly the same points in that King of the Mountains. Now, this is an awful picture to see, because I've seen this, and you've seen this so many times before. There are the leading two. And here is the main field. That is not a minute.
No, it is not. It's 51 seconds, actually. 15.5 kilometers. So they've got them in their gun sights with just under 10 miles from the finish. And they haven't seen them since about the same distance out from the start. They went away just after 10 miles, 17 kilometers. And here we are at 15 to go. The last two survivors know now they won't see the finish. They gave it their best shot, and I take my hats off to them for that, because sometimes it does work out, but not when there's a big prize on offer today like the Maillot Jaune for the winner. That guy at the back, Paul, was David Arroyo, who's a very, very good bike rider. You think he'd have a bit more sense, wouldn't you?
Well, just try and move to the front. You look at that main field there. You can see the riders over on the left-hand side. They're all trying to move up, but there actually isn't enough space for 177 riders to move to the front.
Cast your mind back to the end of stage 1 in Canterbury last year, Paul. Off and crashed and seemingly out of it was Robbie McEwen at 20k to go. He got through a group of riders like that and he won the day. I don't know how he did it, but it was a fabulous finish.
It was a brilliant finish, a brilliant chase back. He chased for an awful long time to get himself first of all back into the race. He wanted to win that race. He wanted to win on British soil. He wanted to cross the line first in Canterbury, and he did that. He came up with the goods. Jégou was hoping to win in Brittany this afternoon, but I think now if he looks over his shoulder, he will start to see that black shadow which is chasing him at 45 seconds.
It's close. It's close. Another steady drag as well.
14.5 kilometers to go, 40 seconds, and really the main field now know they've got these men in their match. They know they can pull them back any time that they want to. There is the next banner across the road indicating to the riders just exactly how far it is to go to the finish. Jégou only won 4 races in his career, and he finished first overall in that stage race in Gabon in the early part of the year. There's the official distance to the finish at 15 kilometers, and the time gap now hovering at just outside the 30-minute mark. But these two guys will continue to fight to try and survive and stay in front of the cameras for as long as possible. As we look here at David de la Fuente. I don't think David de la Fuente has ever won a professional bike race in his career, but he has worn the King of the Mountains leaders jersey in the Tour de France, and that is something he did back in 2006, and he's participating in his 3rd tour. Now there is the main field. That's like the eagle there now waiting to pounce on the small rodent in front, and that would be those two riders who he's trying to chase down and catch. The talons are out, and the success will be at the top of the final climb. Now, this is not good either, because at the top of the climb here in Plumelec, looking out of my commentary box, I can see that it's completely dry on the ground. The wind is not fluttering the flags at all, but those little spots there indicate there's a small amount of rain in the air, and that is dangerous, especially when you bear in mind at 2 kilometers to go to the finish, there is a very narrow, very close narrowing of the road when the riders have to go across this bridge here, the bridge over the River Clay. Still the nervousness now. The tête de la course for Lilian Jégou. He's been on TV for a long time here this afternoon in the presence of David de la Fuente. It's just 30 seconds, but the 30 seconds the main field can wipe out in any 1 kilometer now on the running down towards the finish. They know they've got it sorted out, but who's going to win the stage and who's going to get the first yellow jersey of this year's Tour de France? The first man to cross the line, but who's it going to be? There's that little transponder I was explaining a little bit earlier. That gives us the rapid results that we get here at the Tour de France. And as soon as those riders cross the line, we get a quick printout of what position they've crossed the line in. Now moving to the front, and that's interesting because this is the big Johan van Sommeren in the red and white jersey. He rides for Silence Lotto. He's a teammate of Cadel Evans, and despite the fact that Robbie McEwen has said he wasn't going for the stage, he probably is not too far away from the front here. He knows this finish. He finished here before, back in 1997. Well, there you go. Interesting to see that. I'm looking to see if I can spot Robbie McEwen, and there he is.
Now, Paul, I want to ask you the question. Who sent the Silence Lotto riders to the front, Cadel Evans or Robbie McEwen? Well,
I noticed Robbie McEwen was riding at the back of that line of Silence Lotto riders. So Robbie, despite the fact that he's diverted attention away from himself, has said, well, you know, a stage win in the Tour de France is a stage win in the Tour. So I'm going to move up there, and if I've got a chance, I'll go for it. If he gets safely through that little bridge at 1.5 kilometers to go, Phil, he'll try and hang on to the top of this climb and create the surprise.
Well, the bridge is extremely narrow. It is well padded out with straw bales. I can tell you, it is. You come down to it. It's a sharp right-hand turn. It is narrower than the road they're riding right now, and then they'll look ahead and they'll see the hills sweeping away to the left. It is really, you've got to be in the first probably 40 riders over that bridge to have any chance.
And the scary thing is, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, as Marcel Wust, a former great sprinter himself, said to us, Phil, they'll be coming down at that bridge at around about 55 miles an hour. A touch of brakes, you could find yourself in the brink.
Which you could. I hope they can swim, but we don't want that to happen. Robbie McEwen, a winner of 12 stages of the Tour de France. He knows what it's like to cross the line. Let's not forget that Mark Cavendish is looking for his first Tour de France stage wins this year. He is an absolutely brilliant bike rider. He picked up 2 stages in the recent Tour of Italy, but I'm not sure today will be the stage for Mark. He was the one that had a real rough ride on the opening road into Canterbury last year. Then he learned that riding in a Tour de France stage is unlike any other bicycle race in the world. This is for real.
Well, he came last year, I think, Phil, to learn. He went to the Giro d'Italia to see if he could drag his body across the mountains, and now he's come here to learn about the Tour de France and to try and get himself a stage victory. 10 kilometers to go, 15 seconds advantage. They're hanging on by the skin of their teeth in the main field. If they look round, they're looking like this, rather nervous.
And the road's getting narrower here as we head into the outskirts of Plumelec here. We'll circumnavigate the town to get in the right direction for the hill. Good job of not going through the town centre, because it is another beautiful town, very narrow streets, a few of them cobbled, and little squares and shops. But the field here, they're out in the countryside still. It's been a good opening day of racing. Very, very sad to report the loss of Duclos Lazal, out with a broken left wrist. But the Tour now heading up towards the 10 kilometers to go. 10 kilometers. They're almost home, and they're now dangling 12 seconds in front of the field. It seems all of a sudden Silence Lotto, the team of Robbie McEwen, the sprinter, Cadel Evans, the Tour de France favourite, there they are in red. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth in that line, Paul. They want this.
Well, they're making sure they're doing this for 2 reasons. They want to make sure that Cadel Evans stays at the front end of the main field, because let's not forget, with the finish on top of a climb like this, you could throw away 20 or 30 seconds.
Easy,
it's very important.
Easy.
very, very important to make sure you don't lose any silly time there. On the front now is Leif Hoster. You can see Cadel Evans over to the right-hand side in about 4th position, and they're all starting to queue up now. This is starting to resemble very much the charge of the Light Brigade as we come here through the little valley below Plumelec. They'll be waiting to see. There's a crash at the back again. Another crash. This is why you've got to ride at the front end of the main field. The road is blocked here. That's why we could see Cadel Evans at the front end of the main field and all of his other teammates. We're trying to get this sorted out if we can. Who's gone down there? There's a rider from Barlow World has gone down there. And
well, it looks like Chris Froome to me. I hope I'm wrong there, Paul. It was a very quick camera flash, but they're all getting it together again. But these are the narrow roads, and these are the big worries.
Juan Mauricio Soler, I think, is the rider who went down there, Phil, and he should not have been at the back end of the main field, and he's got a couple of teammates there alongside him trying to see how he is. It's going to take him a lot of time to get himself fixed up. I'm not sure whether he can carry on and finish riding this stage here this afternoon, but the important thing is he's going to lose himself an awful lot of time because he won't get himself back into the race with 9 kilometers to go.
Well, let's hope this is a terrible blow to Barlow World. It's a South African company pinning a lot of hope on the man who won the King of the Mountains last year, and looking as though he's standing there. Images of Hervé Duclos-Lassalle a couple of hours ago at 8 kilometers to go. He's losing huge time anyway because he's not going to catch up with the field right now, but they are getting underway, and because he's got 2 teammates with him, it must be Soler because he is a team leader.
Well, I tell you what, Phil, at a situation like this, he's going to lose himself 2 to 4 minutes at the end of the stage, but at least he's back in the race. He was never really thinking about a high place in the overall classification. He was thinking about the King of the Mountains classification. But I'll tell you one thing now, that's the reason why you ride at the front end of the main field. You take the risk to fight to be in the first 15 to 25 places, which is what Lance Armstrong did for all of the 7 tours that he won. He was always at the front end of the main field, making sure that he didn't lose a little bit of silly time here and a little bit of silly time there.
Well, it sounds easy, Paul, but it takes enormous strength to position yourself and hold those positions, and it is far from easy. But I think Jougou there said to De La Fuente, take a look over your shoulder. I don't think we're going to win this stage today at 7.9 kilometers. Terrific day of racing. Nearly a bit of a flick and a crash there by De La Fuente. I don't know what he was doing. A field coming around that bottom corner. Let's hope they make it round safely.
Well, look, just check this crowd out. I remember one time riding into Saint-Brieuc on one of the stages of the Tour de France, and it was in Brittany, and the crowd is absolutely ballistic. The noise is out there supporting these guys. So as we look here now at the 2 leaders, you can see right on the front, they're still surviving. They're still off the front end of the main field by 5 or 6 seconds. But now we're going to have a massive charge here up this final climb of the day, 1.7 kilometers uphill. But first of all, after this little climb, they've got to drop down and negotiate that nasty little bridge I keep talking about at 1.7 kilometers to go. These 2 looking over their shoulders, they know they're fairly soon going to be back into the fold. At 7.2 kilometers to go to the finish. The pale blue jerseys now coming to the front end of the main field. That is was Team High Road, I should say, and it's now Team Columbia. Columbia just coming in at the last moment. So there we go, and I'm just hearing crackling over race radio. Échappée terminée, the end of the breakaway, and they're now back in the main fold. There you can see the teammates of Robbie McEwen and, of course, Cadel Evans over on the left-hand side in the black and red jerseys, making sure that Cadel stays at the front end of the main field and doesn't lose any time at all. There's the congratulations. We tried, we did it, we survived up until 7 kilometers to go. A long day in the saddle, nothing to pay for it. There are the 2 riders over on the left-hand side sliding back down the main field. There's the crowd enthusiastically waiting now for the main field to get here, saluting the helicopter, saluting the Tour de France, and wondering who's going to be the first wearer of the yellow jersey in this year's Tour. Liquigas over on the right-hand side. That's the team of Pipo Pozzato. Now, I tell you what, now this is how there's another, this was an attempt, and now this is Juan Mauricio Soler. We're a little bit further back there. Now, the team of Barlow World are chasing like crazy to try and get their man here, number 51, back into the main field, and I think they were just a little bit too over-enthusiastic. Now, I'm just trying to see if there's a number on his bike here. Now, there's an indication that he's on a different bike. Believe it or not, he must have damaged that bike just a little bit ago. And just having a quick look there, you can see Chris Froome, the rider we were talking about, number 57, the rider who was born in Nairobi, Kenya. He's at the back of the race, trying to pace Mauricio Soler back into the main field.
Well, it's all action now, Paul, and Maurizio Soler at least looks like he might be, well, he's riding at least, so he's going to get back in, I hope. But if not, he'll live to fight another day. That's important.
I don't think he's going to get himself back into the main field, Phil, because the main field is split completely because of that accident. I was happy to see Chris Froome was the rider who stopped there to try and pace him back into the main field, but we're now looking at 6 kilometres to go, and it's really becoming a very tense moment. The main field has pretty much split into 2 or 3 different groups, just as it did back in 1997.
Deja vu, as the riders now are feeling the pressure of the narrow roads here, and we haven't got to the bridge yet.
Well, this is the front group. The front group has managed to get themselves together, a little bit calm now. They know they've got themselves through the first part of the danger of this running towards the finish. Inside of 6 kilometres to go. A lot of riders at the back now are scrambling, trying to catch up before the start of this climb so as they don't lose any time on the first day of racing. The pressure is there. You can see Team Silence Lotto there. They're looking after them. And there's Cadel Evans.
Yes.
Already on day 1, riding in 3rd or 4th position. Here you can see our Team Bala World. Juan Maurizio Soler on the front there, 57. Chris Froome, he's riding his first Tour de France here, Phil, trying to get his leader back into the main field.
And the other rider with him, Gianpaolo Ciulla. So you've got Soler, the 51. He's the man who is being protected and helped here by the team. The hard workers, of course, the first timers in the Tour have been sent back to get that man up to the pace. I don't think it'll happen, but it might. 5 kilometres to go. At least Soler will climb well when he gets up towards the finish. Margus Berghout again at the front. Looks like Adam Hansen maybe up here as well, as they try to guide this race towards the finish for Team Colombia. As I say, it will be a big turn up for the team were they to win today. In their new colours, which they only saw for the first time yesterday morning.
Well, look how many pale blue jerseys are at the front of this main field from Team Colombia. You've got one Armada on the right-hand side. They're looking after Kim Kirken on the left-hand side. I'm not sure whether or not they're trying to keep Mark Cavendish at the front end of the main field. But now the nerves are really starting to come in. It's so important to stay in the first 15 to 25 places. I always say it is important because there is where you avoid the crashes. That's why Team Silence Lotto brought Cadel Evans to the front, to make sure he wasn't involved in any of those fracas at the back.
Absolutely. The only way is to get your team captains up to the front of the race, then drive the race so fast that nobody can change their position in the pack. And that is exactly what's happening now. 3.8 kilometres, and it is the boys in blue of Team Colombia here. They're either looking for a win by Kim Kirken or George Hincapie. I don't see George there.
Well, I tell you what, I just caught a quick glimpse of the heart rate there of Adam Hansen, Phil. It was up to 170 beats a minute. His cadence was up to 100, and he was generating almost 800 watts. This is because now the pressure is seriously on. It's hurting.
Well, Adam Hansen on the front, just about to be pushed to the back here, but he's driving on. He won his national time trial champion of Australia, little town of Buninyong in the state of Victoria. And there's a bit of cyclocross on the right there as a rider goes off course. One of the Gerolsteiner boys, might have been Robert Foster.
Well, it's, you know, this is really getting very grippy now. 3 kilometres to go, 1.8 miles of racing. We're not too far away from that nasty little bridge, which we're expecting these riders to go through in excess of 50 miles an hour. Then you have to change to the complete end of your gear ratios and start climbing up that final climb of the day. 1.7 kilometres here to Plumelec. The wind is not going to be an important factor now, but this is great to see. This team is a team of musketeers. You know, Team Colombia have been one of the most successful teams on the circuit this year, whether it be the men's team or the women's team as Team High Road, and now they are riding on the crest of a wave, knowing that the first man to cross the line gets the yellow jersey.
Well, the other riders up there in the white and blue is Team Quickstep from Belgium, and they're either riding here for Stein de Volder, their leader, or Gert Stegmans, the rider who won the stage into Ghent in Belgium when we crossed the channel after we left Great Britain last year. 2.1. I think it's around 1.9 to go when we get to that bridge, Paul. These boys are now racing down towards the bridge. We estimate the speed here, and it's upsetting our cameras a little bit, to be in the region of 80 kilometres an hour, because it is a downhill drop to the bridge and they will make a right turn. And this is the bridge as they make the turn there, and the leaders are safely round. They've done well. They've made it look almost too easy, but they're all safely round. Breathe a sigh of relief.
One rider there from Team Colombia moving over, moving out of the way. He's done his job for the day, but they've still got 2 or 3 riders at the front end of this main field. I wouldn't be surprised to see Erik Zabel not too far away, and I think, in fact, in around about 4th position, there he is. The old man of the sport, Erik Zabel, is riding in 4th position. He won here in 1997.
And he relied heavily on Bjarne Riis to help him up the hill. While Bjarne Riis is watching from the team cars now. He won the Tour de France back in 1996 and has retired, but Zabel will never retire. He'll go on till he's 100, and he sat in there at 38 years of age. He is riding his 14th, I think it's his 14th Tour de France, as we got an attack going on the right.
Fabian Wegmann, the champion of Germany, and this is exactly what outfoxed Erik Zabel a couple of years ago, because there was a late attack came. It's not the champion of Germany. In fact, it's arrived from Agri-Toubel.
This is arrived from Agri-Toubel, who's made the move here, and it would be the sort of move by Romain Feylieu, who has made a move on the climb, and I think he's gone too early, but it is indeed Feylieu who's gone as he starts the climb here, and he's got a little gap over the field, and this is the moment of confusion. Who's going to take up the chase, because they don't want to waste their energy, and it's a good gamble by the Frenchman. But now comes Gerolsteiner.
Gerolsteiner have got themselves organised. This is the counter move now. Feylieu really himself a little bit of a sprinter, I felt, was going just a bit too early there, but now we've got Gerolsteiner. This looks like Stefan Schumacher.
Well, this could be a good move from Stefan Schumacher. He once won the Amstel Gold Race on a move like this up the Kouwberg in the south of Holland. He's now made he's got an enormous gap. There'll have to be a quick reaction to close this down. We're looking for the 1 kilometre to go. This drag will split the field up for sure now as he continues to count. Now the field is starting to rip from behind.
Well, they're all over. You've got to convict yourself now just to keep going. You cannot pause at a moment like this. Erik Zabel is still pretty much up there. They're now starting to get the headwind into their faces, these riders, as they come up the last little bit of curlies, as they come up towards the top. Schumacher looking over his shoulder to see whether or not he's got the power still to go. The main field is still all over. There is Alejandro Valverde in the middle, the champion of Spain. He's looking for the gap. He wants to win this. Coming across there is Kim Kirken. Kirken has made the junction, and now he makes the move.
Kirken has gone over the top, and I saw also Valverde and Philippe Gilbert in white as Kirken tries to go clear now. And there's a move from a Lampre rider. Is it Cunego? No, it's not, right on his back wheel. I think Kim Kirken's gone a little bit too soon here, Paul.
Well, I think that's Alessandro Ballan there in 2nd place, but look, in fact, you can see Kirken is opening up the gap here. Schumacher's gone backwards. There is Cadel Evans in about 4th position. He's pretty happy just to be there. We're inside of 250 metres to go, and this is going to be a great move coming round the corner. 41. Well, Kirken.
This was what was planned, Kim Kirken. Alan Piper said he hoped it, but that Valverde, I think, has taken a flyer from the line. Alexander Valverde is heading home. Well, his team said he would win. He seems to want the yellow jersey from day one, the hot favourite with Cadel Evans, and that is an incredible win for Alejandro Valverde. Philippe Gilbert, I think, will have got 2nd place on the line there. Paul, the power of that man.
Well, I think not only the power of Alejandro Valverde, but the way he remained calm and collected and watched the race unfold in front of him, and then all of a sudden he came out to take the big pay packet there this afternoon, and this really has split the field, because we're still going to wait for a good couple of minutes before everybody comes up to the finish line. But Alejandro Valverde is the top man. We know he's got the form. He's just won the national championships, but there he very easily dominated that win. Everybody tried. They threw everything at it, and he came up with the goods.
One man we didn't see trying to get clear there was Cadel Evans, but I think he was just trying to stay safe and get the same time. But you know, Valverde came clear of the field there. He will have nibbled a few seconds on the clock, I think, which will give him an overall lead of note in the Tour de France. He wanted to open with a stage win. He's got his wish, but it means he pulls on yellow tonight, and that means 3 weeks of hard work for his team. It was his 9th victory already of the season. He only won 5 the whole year last year, and just look at these groups coming in. Big time gaps tonight.
Well, the last news I heard on Race Radio, Phil, was in fact Juan Maurizio Soler of Team Barlow World was more than a minute behind with 3 kilometres to go, so he's going to use huge chunks of time here this afternoon. But that was a dominating performance. There he is now, coming up the line, and he's going to have lost himself a good 2.5 minutes, Phil, by the end of the stage, and that's a little bit of a shame.
Well, he's fighting on here, but when bad luck hits like that, then you change your targets, and his target is the King of the Mountains now, which he won last year as a surprise. He was coming here, I think, for a top 6 finish and possibly a King of the Mountains title again. Losing this sort of time, I think he has to reassess and just concentrate on the King of the Mountains now. The clock is counting down below. The average for the day, a very quick race, pace, 43 kilometres an hour, nearly 20, 25, 26, 27 miles an hour. There's Mark Cavendish coming in, looking quizzical. Who won, he's saying? He's looking around, hoping it was Kim Kirk and his teammate, but it wasn't. It was national champion of Spain, Alejandro Valverde. Seems a winner week is the way to go at the moment for Valverde.
It seems to be now. Let's just have a little look at that. And at this point here, it looked as if Kim Kirken had got the state, but look at this acceleration coming into that final corner. Alejandro Valverde wants the win here. He's the man who takes responsibility of the chase. Just coming into the slipstream of Kim Kirken. Thank you very much. I'll use that slipstream to accelerate, go straight by, and he has got himself a big gap. There will be a time gap tonight. It might be a second, it might be two, but it'll be enough. Well, a week ago, Alejandro Valverde crossed the line in first place in the Spanish National Championships, and here he's crossing the line in first place in the Tour de France and getting himself the yellow jersey. Kirken was trying to get himself the win there. Just a little bit further back, the Française de Jeu rider is Philippe Gilbert. And that, I have to say, we're now just looking at Juan Mauricio Soler coming to the line. He's lost himself 3 minutes, and as you said, I think he's going to have to reassess his chances here this afternoon and for the rest of the 3 weeks.
Really tough luck, and I know how disappointed the people from Barlow will be because they've got a great team here this year. They're a wild card entry in the Tour last year, and they got second in the green jersey competition. They won 2 stages. They finished up with Mauricio Soler there getting the King of the Mountains title, so naturally they had high hopes this year. It's only day one, life can get better, but right now I think Soler will have to concentrate on his King of the Mountains again.
Well, he needs to get himself over and above that injury. There's a confirmation. They've actually given second place there to Philippe Gilbert.
Yes.
I know it was very close, and Kim Kirken faded down towards the end and got himself a 4th place finish. An interesting top 4 there, I have to say. Ricardo Rico, there's a man to watch out for the future. He was 5th, and Cadel Evans crossed the line in 6th place. Not trying to win the stage, just trying to be very clever and sensible.
I think he'd be happy enough with the way that goes. They like to get these over. This is Chris Froome and the other rider from Barlow World, Chula, I think. They're coming over the line. Again, off the back. They'll be disappointed. A good talking to tonight. Lift the morale. Things go wrong for everybody at some stage in the Tour de France, but today it went right for this rider. Alejandro Valverde, win number 9 of the season and a Tour de France win. This is the man, by the way, who once beat Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France up at the top of Courchevel.
Welcome back to Plumelec. Well, stage 1 of the 2008 Tour de France has produced a leader by 1 second. It's Alejandro Valverde, but Chris Boardman, it was more than 1 second. It was a show of power from the second favourite in this race.
I think what it showed really was experience and real courage to just wait and wait and wait. And we could see that first there's Schumacher, then there's Kirchen. Valverde waited to 300 metres to go, timed his effort beautifully there. And of course, that's certainly going to do no harm at all for the overall. It's no easy stage for anybody. I mean, Evans, all the contenders had to work hard today, and he made the most of it.
I mean, Cadel Evans was up there, not far behind Valverde, but, I mean, as we see him, we see how much it means to him, his second stage win in the Tour. But, I mean, it's as much a statement of intent as a stage win, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. I mean, he came in a very buoyant mood just before the Tour and in all the conferences that he gave. My real concern for him is he's going to have been on top form for well over 6 weeks by the end of this Tour. He won the Dauphiné Libéré, he won the National Championships, and that really is a long time. So he's good now. Can he keep it all the way through?
All right, so Alejandro Valverde coming home in first place ahead of Philippe Gilbert and Jérôme Pinault. Kim Kirken, who looked like he might have had the stage 1, was 4th. Ricardo Rico 5th. Cadel Evans safely home in 6th, just ahead of Frank Schleck, who obviously suffered no ill effects from his crash. Filippo Pozzato, Oscar Freire and Valverde's teammate Oscar Pereiro in 10th. And Chris Boardman, he's not on the graphic there, but David Miller, an impressive 11th, so he's obviously feeling good. Yeah,
Dave's really good at this kind of finish. He knows how to position his bike and get himself just right up there, but didn't quite have the legs. But it certainly bodes well for the next few days. Maybe he can do something with it.
And the first big victim of the day, obviously, Juan Mauricio Soler. We'll talk about him and hopefully see the presentation soon, but we've got lots of luck with that. Now, Chris, the Tour took this decision to drop the prologue, hoping, you know, for an exciting stage and some big time splits. Seems to have paid off as a gamble.
It was certainly a nice finish, and it's definitely a little bit different, but personally I like to see the variety.
Well, you like to win?
I would anyway, but I like the time trial. I think it's a nice spectacle. It's different to every day, but yeah, it does change things, and today it was first across the line.
And it's certainly changed things for Juan Mauricio Soler. Over 3 minutes down. I mean, his race isn't over, but not the best start.
No, it's not ideal, but these things come back and they can work for you. For example, you get yourself, everybody's absolutely flat out. I mean, which climb are you going to let go? So it may be something that actually works for him in a week's time.
All right, so Juan Mauricio Soler having a bad start to the race. Alejandro Valverde having the best start possible. He's won the stage, so let's get over and see him get the first yellow jersey of this year's race.
Alejandro Valverde has climbed up onto the top step of the podium. That is his 9th victory of the year. He's won himself so many great tours this year, but this one...
Nice puff of relief there, Paul. Like a lot of professional cyclists, he never likes to shave on the day of a bike race.
It's always a very nervous thing, and a lot of riders believe that old wives' tale that to have every last little bit of energy, you shouldn't shave on the day of a big race. And Alejandro Valverde has subscribed to that belief as well, and it obviously worked for him this afternoon.
It certainly did. Those legs that look so thin, I'm surprised they got up the hill so fast. He's shaking hands with all the dignitary here in Plumelec. The man who's guiding him across the platform there is none other than Bernard Hinault, the last Frenchman to win the Tour de France in 1985, and also the man who won the race on 5 occasions. We've seen a great race today. I must say, Paul, I think it's a little unjust that the organisers so far have given it all the same time, but I think they're reconsidering.
I think they'll reconsider. I'm absolutely certain that there should be a 1-second time gap between those two riders, between Alejandro Valverde and the rest of the main field, and very shortly he's going to get himself what he wanted at the start of the day, his dream of yellow.
The Golden Fleece, the maillot jaune for Alejandro Valverde. That's what he wanted. Now he's in the hot seat, the first leader of the Tour.
Well, his lead, I'm thinking once we get the official results at the end of the day this afternoon, is going to be a 1-second advantage over Philippe Gilbert, and that doesn't look like a man who's just ridden 200 kilometres, does it? He looks very fresh. It's always easy to be fresh in victory. A little bit more difficult when you've been beaten, as I would think Kim Kirker will be feeling a little bit sad this evening because he was so close.
So he's got the first yellow jersey of the race, Alejandro Valverde, but he's got 3,300 odd kilometres to defend it still. Let's take a look at the full route of this year's Tour de France.
It really is the most intriguing Tour route we've seen for years, continuing here in Brittany with 2 more days of hilly homage paying to the region that's produced more Tour winners than the rest of France put together. Stage 2 actually takes us north, off to Saint-Brieuc to visit the Chris Boardman crime scene. They're still waiting for witnesses to his 1995 crash to come forward.
Boardman's gone down, Phil. There he is at the side of the road.
As early as stage 4, there's a short, sharp time trial around Cholet for the favourites to get their teeth into, or vice versa. And by stage 6, we'll be hitting our first mountaintop finish at Superbès. So much for the traditional flat first week with nothing but sprints and crashes for punctuation. It's an anti-clockwise year, so the Pyrenees precede the Alps and provide 2 huge days of racing. Stage 9 over the climbs of the Périssord and the Aspin before a downhill run to the finish, and stage 10 over the Tourmalet and up to Hautacam before a trip down in the team bus towards the first rest day. Provence provides the scenery for what should be a couple of sweltering transitional stages to take the race towards the Alps and towards Italy, the only bit of border crossing on the Tour itinerary this year. After a first ever visit to the ski resort of Prato Nevoso, the race returns to France and the highest pass in the whole of the Alps, the Col de la Bonnette, at 2,860 metres. Then, before the riders have caught their breath, they'll find themselves on stage at the Gradient Lovers Glastonbury. Alpe d'Huez, the freak-packed ascent of the Tour's most famous mountain, crowns an epic day's climbing on stage 17. And if all that hasn't produced a clear winner, it'll come down to the final time trial, 53 kilometres between Sarrilly and Saint-Amand-Montrond, before the survivors roll onto the cobbles of the Champs-Élysées in 3 weeks' time.
Three weeks of interesting racing until we get to the Champs-Élysées. Quickly, Chris Boardman, will Alejandro Valverde defend the jersey in the first week?
I think only as a byproduct of looking after himself for the overall.
All right, so on to stage 2. Let's take a look at the route map for tomorrow. Now, just having battled south out of shipping forecast territory, the riders are forced to tack back north tomorrow. Stage 2 is 164.5 kilometres from Orhai to Saint-Brieuc, or London to Leicester if you'd like to visualise it stripped of all romantic appeal. 4 small climbs along the way, so another tough day for the riders, but it should make great viewing. Now, that's tomorrow. Before then, we're back on this evening with highlights of today's stage. They're coming up at 7:15. Then we're back half an hour earlier tomorrow, live coverage of stage 2 from 2 in the afternoon with highlights back to their regular slot of 7 o'clock, where you'll find them for the rest of the race. Now, don't forget the website, itv.com/tour, where you can find the podcast, of course, and also email us with any questions. The big question has been answered today, though. Alejandro Valverde is the first yellow jersey of this year's Tour. If it was in a 12-step programme, day 1 would have been the first day of its recovery. It's done pretty well.